Good morning.
Let me call to order this Mayor Commission work session. It is June 17, 2024, and the time is 10:01. Hope everyone had a good weekend. Commissioner Peduzzi, hope you had a good Father's Day.
Thank you.
All right, item 1, trolley stopgap program update. You gonna kick this off, Mr. Fana?
I will. Good morning, Mayor Commissioners. Armando Fana, Assistant City Administrator, and happy belated Father's Day to all the fathers out there. Hope everybody had an enjoyable weekend. So we're going to talk a little bit about our stopgap pilot program. As you know, we launched it about a little bit less than a year ago. So we're going to go through some of the history and also some of the what we're looking at for the future. There you see the agenda. So as everybody knows, the city's really been experiencing a population increase and growth, especially since 2001 post-COVID. But even in the last decade, we've seen increases of over 16% in our population over that time. So along with the population growth, we've also seen growth in our mobility options with increased use of Tri-Rail, the addition of Brightline over the past few years, and expanded service into Orlando, which has also benefited us, bike share, and then expanded PalmTran offerings. Just in this coming fall, we're going to have an expanded service that's going to be a express bus route that's going to go from Port St. Lucie to the city of West Palm Beach. So some of those commuters from Port St. Lucie will be able to take advantage of that. So as we've been growing, we've been seeing those changes. Probably the biggest change we've seen in downtown has been the increased use of on-demand rideshare services like Circuit, and you'll see some of the private rideshare as well. Not just Uber, but even some of the hotels that are utilizing a rideshare service to provide mobility within and just outside of downtown and from downtown to the island of Palm Beach and other areas that are surrounding. So that's probably been the most visible change we've seen over the past few years when it comes to mobility in the city. For some reason, So let's go back a little bit. As most of you will recall, almost a year ago, we stopped the fixed route trolley service in downtown, and that was for various reasons, including we had an expiring contract with the company that was providing those services. The trolleys themselves were an aging fleet. They were constantly breaking down. We had issues even with the ADA ramps and getting those to function, low ridership, and then difficulty in maneuvering the trolleys in our new clematis streetscape, which was narrowed. So those were all the challenges that we had. And so we made the decision, or you all made the decision last year, to scrap the trolleys and then move towards a stopgap pilot option to fill in the time period while we kind of work out the details and the kinks of what we're going to do in the future. Just to give you an idea of where the ridership was in 2022, we had 3 fixed route transit lines from the trolleys, and they carried for that year 65, a little bit, almost 66,000 passengers. And the headways, the time in between each trolley was between 26 to 67 minutes in terms of frequency. So that's just not going to cut it for any public mobility system. We wanted to make sure we also, during this time period that we're doing this pilot and the stopgap, get enough input from the citizens so that we can provide a optimum service throughout the city, not just in the downtown, but also areas north and south. And you'll hear about those citizen feedback opportunities we've had over the past year. I also wanted to point out, when it comes to public transportation, there's been a lot of lessons learned. I've learned a lot over these last 10 months. But when it comes to public transportation, public mobility, it's not static. It's constantly evolving. And during this period, we've even done some tweaks. But over the next few years, as the city changes, grows, and evolves itself, so will our mobility options. And it is going to depend on the types of vehicles that are out there, the funding sources that may come along, and then where the nodes of the city growth are, so that we can accommodate that growth and make sure that we're effective. We just kind of ran a trolley system for a while around the downtown and wasn't really strategic in a lot of ways. So we're going to move to a more strategic way of looking at mobility. As luck would have it, when the pilot started almost a year ago, we also hired a new mobility and transportation manager, Jessica Keller. So the timing was perfect for Jessica just to slide on in with this new program. So I'm going to ask her to come up and present to you what mobility looks like right now and where we might be headed in the future.
Good morning, I'm Jessica Keller, and if you've been to any of my community engagement meetings, typically I would have an applause sign now, but I was told I should be a little bit more formal here, so I'll do my best. But at any rate, yes, I arrived to the city just as the stopgap program was put in place. And on June 1st, the city began the stopgap transportation services with Circuit for a term of 18 to 24 months. It's composed of a it's a free service, as you know, and it's composed of fixed route and on-demand. The service is for a period of 18 to 24 months, $2.3 million, and the intent is that we're going to be collecting information in order to inform us of a new permanent service. You said no, there we go, okay. So the stopgap area, the on-demand area is the blue area, and the yellow area is, generally speaking, the fixed route service. The fixed route service is the van. Has anyone used the van service? Raise your hand. And you probably have opinions about what that van is like, and we'll talk a little bit about that later. The fixed route service has 15 stops along the route. The most significant demand is Publix. We get about 600 boardings at that location. We have, here is another popular location. St. Andrews follows at the third most popular stop with 250. And to my surprise, Tri-Rail is hovering around 80 per month. So I'm going to take you back in time a little bit. 2019, you did start working with a consultant to make recommendations for a trolley system expansion. Of course, COVID hit, and we rebooted the study within the context of the post-pandemic transportation landscape. You had the population growth that Armando mentioned, and changed commuter patterns. We have work from home, we have flex hours, all of that needs to be considered. In May, I arrived and we began the trolley stopgap, on-demand fixed route. We began our data collection, and we're constantly collecting feedback from our stakeholders. In the summer, these are some of the places that I visited to inform people of the new service, and all along the way, it was a great opportunity for me, since I'm new to the area, to get to know the community and build those relationships with the community and pull them along as we make progress through the development of this program, but also it's very useful in other projects that we work on. I make sure that they're always informed. We also have involved the Mobility Coalition, known as WPB-Go, and we've gotten feedback from the board and those members. We've been present at various markets and other special events. In November, we visited the shuttle manufacturer in Atlantic Beach, Florida, and we've interviewed their customers and their facilities. And also during this time, we implemented fares to Palm Beach in response to community feedback. In December, we brought some of the vehicles that may possibly work for the city of West Palm Beach to the city, and we operated along what a north-south corridor might look like so we could get a feel of what those vehicles were like. We invited some of the people in this room participated, and we made sure that residents who would be interested in the service and people who would benefit from the service were involved. In January, we held four community meetings related specifically to this program and what the future may look like. We held them along the north-south corridor. We went to our potential customers. And at the end of this year, we're hoping that we can advertise for a premier mobility service provider. And we're going to talk a little bit about what that premier service provider might look like. Talk a little bit about the engagement, and some of the key things I'd like to point out to you is that over the course of time, we have given surveys, and trying to get surveys back from people we know can be challenging. But we had 102 people participate. 50% of those people felt like they do not have access to safe, affordable, efficient options. They all want shorter wait times, and 42% want improvements to the existing system. These are just some pictures from engagement activities, and these are 3 vehicles that we tested. The vehicle on your right is the eMoto shuttle. The vehicle in the middle top, that is the e-bus. And in the top left corner is Beep, which is an autonomous vehicle. We went with residents to Lake Nona, Florida, to visit their facility so that we could feel what an autonomous vehicle might be like here in West Palm Beach.
It's bumpy.
It is bumpy. You're giving it away, but we're not quite ready yet but we will be in the future. So that narrows the options down to this point to the 2 vehicles that you see here. The 2 primary determining factors for a fixed route mobility service is that it's Buy America compliant so that we can use grant funding to purchase them, and also an electric vehicle. To find a vehicle that has both of those, that leaves us with vehicle number 2 on the right. They came with, we had the opportunity to ride that shuttle here in West Palm Beach. Also, I'd like to point out that based on the feedback of people that participated, they overwhelmingly preferred vehicle number 2. And the reason they preferred that vehicle is because they liked the feeling of open air. This vehicle is open air, but comes equipped, is an option, where they have plastic rain guards that can come down if it starts raining. Talk a little bit about data here. This is over the past year. In July 2023, we added the on-demand vehicles to the existing DDA fleet. We added 5 vehicles to their 3 vehicles. Over this past year, we've had over 36,000 on-demand trips, and they are costing about $12 per rider. On demand, on the other hand, I had 195,000 passengers, and that's hovering around $8 per rider. I've got 2 arrows at the top. Well, the first arrow is when we introduced our fleet of on-demand vehicles. And in November, that's when there was a fare added to go to Palm Beach. And what you can see there is that the ridership did decrease, but our costs stayed around the same. Another thing that we found was during that time in November, I have the arrow, that is where we implemented the fare. And the big change was the cancellations dropped significantly. So that shows if you have skin in the game, you're less likely to cancel those trips, which gives you better performance. The party size is important because what we're trying to do is make sure that we reduce the number of single occupancy vehicles in the city. And we are hovering below 2, but above 1.5. And that's not quite where we want to be. We want to see that line go above, we want to make it to 2. We want at least 2 people to be in those on-demand vehicles, plus the driver. Just for some context, speaking with a city very different than our own, but Port St. Lucie, 92% of their trips are only 1 person, so they're significantly lower than us. Where are people taking ride the on-demand service? We have 20% downtown, 4% to Palm Beach Island, 5% to north of Palm Beach Lakes Bridge, and 71% everywhere else. That's in the past 4 months, that's not over the past year. So looking ahead, so some of the lessons learned, We need to be able to balance the competing wants. Everybody wants free door-to-door limo service, and we cannot provide free door-to-door limo service. That is not sustainable. So we have to massage the system in order to make it work for us, work for everybody. Reacting to the demand for services. So if you have used on-demand service, when you first started using it, the chances are is that it was super convenient. Somebody was picking you up within 5 to 8 minutes. Now, those wait times have increased dramatically. We are getting feedback that the rides are just not showing up, but that's because of the demand. Everybody wants that service. One of the confusing things is multiple contracts with a single provider, and this causes confusion for our customers. So over and over again, when I meet with the public, they are confused. What is Ride WPB? What is Circuit? What is Rose Trolley? And they see all of these different services, and what they're looking for is one streamlined process and service. The user interface. The app, we've gotten a number of, the app is used, for those who haven't used the service, is for on-demand service. You call using the app, just like Uber or Lyft. Most people have used Uber and Lyft here, and so we get complaints about the app. The vehicles, I alluded to that as an issue earlier. The on-demand, the fixed route service, the vans, people do not like them. I haven't met a person who has given me positive feedback for those vans. So we know what vehicle we don't want for the fixed route service. And then there's the data. The data is very, very complex. If we don't have a good clearinghouse for the data, it's hard for us to make decisions on how to modify the service to provide our customers the best service that they deserve. So looking ahead, what you see right now, this is the current coverage area for the existing stopgap program, combined on-demand and fixed route. It's accessible to about 35,000 people, and what that means is that about 35,000 people can use this service. The current structure is giving us about 18,000 trips per month, and we're paying about $140,000 per month, and that includes the DDA on-demand vehicles. So what could it look like? Get ready. This is what it could look like. The proposed system would provide access to over 95,000 people, keeping in mind what the population of the city of West Palm Beach is. We want to provide this access to service in support of economic growth, and we don't want to deter that growth due to the inability to move people efficiently. This plan is integrated with the downtown mobility plan update due at the end of this year, and it's in support of the downtown master plan update. What does it look like? Integration. So I'm going to go through a couple slides really fast. You have the slides in front of you. In fact, I'm going to skip over these. You have the packet. I think it's more helpful for you to see the maps. But we want to have integrated service. So let me go back. Right now, we're looking at everything separately. We have all of these separate mobility options. And when we're looking at them separately, we don't provide the most efficient service, and we don't provide the service that has the greatest cost savings. One way to look at it is to prioritize fixed route service. And what that means is that if I am in the south end of the city, I can call the service, an on-demand vehicle will pick me up, but it's going to take me to a fixed route. That fixed route could be PalmTran if it's the fastest route. It could be our own fixed route service, but the service will give us the fastest, efficient route there. So I'm going to zoom in. The blue area, that is your 1/4 mile walk shed. That is about a 5 to 10-minute walk, depending on who you are and what kind of shoes you're wearing that day. So when I look at the walk shed areas, I think about the time that I weighed 200 pounds and had to wear heels and was pregnant, and it was hot. I was taking me 10 to 15 minutes to walk that distance, where now I can walk it in 5. So the blue area is the walk shed for a potential fixed route service. The green area would be the on-demand area. The orange lines are the existing Palm Tran service. And that is always an option, but their frequency is so poor because it can be more than 60 minutes waiting for a Palm Tran vehicle to show up. The best we have is 20 minutes, and that's the Route 1. And if you use the Route 1 service from the north end of the city and you want to go to the south end of the city, you're taking a 10-minute break at the Tri-Rail station because all routes lead to Tri-Rail. So a service that would be provided by the city of West Palm Beach would bypass that 10-minute layover at Palm Tran. So let's say we're in Roosevelt Estates and we want to go downtown. You can see the yellow dot up there, Roosevelt Estates. On-demand, an on-demand vehicle would pick you up. You want to go to downtown, and it'll drop you off to downtown. There's your drop-off point, the red dot. That on-demand vehicle deploys to the next call that happens to be in Flamingo Park. And my dot might be in the wrong spot, but you get the point. The person in Flamingo Park wants to go to Good Samaritan Hospital. So that on-demand vehicle is going to take you to the fixed route service. And you see how there's a lot of yellow vehicles? That's to illustrate the high frequency time that the vehicles are passing you by. So we're looking at 10-minute wait times, 10-minute headways on a fixed route service. In this concept, no one would have to wait more than 10 minutes for a ride to get you on the road, no more than 10 minutes. So you're leaving Flamingo Park, it takes you to the fixed route service. Where am I? There we go. Sorry, I'm going backwards. And that fixed route service takes you directly to Good Samaritan Hospital. And that on-demand vehicle redeploys to its next call. So, Armando.
Well, I can do it from here if you can.
Okay.
So, we look at funding, and right now our primary funding sources are CRA dollars, DDA with the on-demand that they're helping with, and then parking revenues. And that's probably going to be the funding sources for the near future. We have 10 community redevelopment agency districts, which represents about 19% of the population and 14% of the land area. So that is going to be a significant part of revenues that we generate to help pay for this overall transportation system. We don't want to call it a fixed route or a on-demand route anymore. It is our transportation system that we would put in place. Go ahead for the next slide. So some of the estimates that we've looked at, and this is going to have to be phased in over a few years, and it will depend on a couple of different things. But we're looking at a $5 to $7 million annual allocation in order to be able to provide a premier service like this, where you've got that fixed route with the on-demand feeding the fixed route, and you can get people to where they want to go with less than a 10-minute headway. And that's the important part. Every time I've gone anywhere I've traveled and I'm going to take public transportation, what makes me want to take it is it's going to come quickly and it's going to be efficient and on time. I was just recently in Spain, and I jumped on one of their public buses over there in Madrid. It was like every 5 minutes there's a bus there to pick you up, and it's clean, efficient, and take you where you wanted to go, and it was a pleasure to take. So, that takes a big investment and a big commitment. This is not something that's going to happen overnight. This is likely something that we would phase in over time as we identify additional funding sources. There's some potential funding sources that are being talked about and looked at. For example, impact fees. There was some recent legislative changes on impact fees and the ability to collect and use those for transfer mobility and transportation. And then there's some preliminary discussions on a future transportation surtax that would replace the existing infrastructure surtax that obviously has to go to voter approval, and the municipalities and the county have to get together. But at least the county commission has indicated some desire to want to at least look at that and move towards that once the infrastructure tax expires. So that's a possibility. So all these things are going to be funding sources we're going to have to look at if we want to expand and grow this system to make it a world-class system that we all would like to have. So again, this is going to be a phased approach. We'll look at, for this coming year, how we can fund, maximize our funding with DDA, CRA, and parking revenue to begin to phase in this future growth.
And I want to congratulate Armando on emphasizing that it's a system. It's not just on demand, just fixed route service. It's a system that works together to make it efficient. So looking ahead, we're looking to procure a premier mobility service provider that reflects the community feedback and the data that we've collected. It manages the effects of our growing population, which includes the parking pressure. We hear the concerns about parking pressure in communities. And in fact, some of the communities that I visited with have said, we really want the service, but we don't want people to come and park in our neighborhoods, park for free, and get on the service. So we've already started looking for solutions to that issue. Obviously, we want to manage congestion, carbon emissions. It needs to serve the residents, our supporting workforce, and our customers. We mentioned it's a combination of on-demand and fixed route, prioritizing fixed route, less than 10-minute headways and wait times. We want something that includes a real-time dashboard for whoever is going to be managing the system, so that I have the ability to see what's going on the street rather than having to make a phone call, track down someone who can give me some information. We talked about the proposer has to be able to expand and contract services based on the demands of the system. We want to position Ride WPB, which is our brand, as the day-to-day option for all economic classes. We need to adapt to a modern technology-focused and futuristic system approach. We want to integrate customer payments and solutions. We want to create a customer-first experience. We mentioned connecting mobility services with local businesses, connect mobility services with regional transit services, and create a safe, reliable system that even a child can get on without their parents. Next steps. So within the next 4 months, we will be working with the CRA to purchase 4 vehicles to have them work on the existing fixed route here in the city. We've already, we know that we don't like the Ford Transit vehicles, and we've got great feedback from the community about these vehicles. This is just a generic one that would be branded Ride WPB. We would test their performance over 3 months. All this time, we're preparing to issue an RFP or an RFQ, and we would like to launch new service in summer of 2025. Which also coincides with the time that the contract for Circuit is up. So if you have any questions, we're happy to answer them.
And let me just add for the procurement part of it, one of the things I think we've done in the past that was probably not the best way to do it was to issue an RFP with a lot of specifics of what we wanted, right? The private sector that's providing these types of services now throughout the country have become very sophisticated. I mean, the technology has come a long way from what it was 10 years ago or even 5 years ago. It keeps evolving. So we want to provide the data and the analysis that we've had from our users and from the community to whoever's going to be providing a proposal, and let them tell us what is the most efficient system based on the data, not us try to dictate what those routes might look like. Let the private sector use the data that they can collect and the data that we've collected over the past year to give us the most efficient system and routes. And then we'll analyze those, and you'll be able to analyze those and decide what's the best option for the city. With that, we'll take any questions.
All right, thank you. Jessica, let me just publicly state it's so great to have you on the team in your capacity. I've seen you in action, and you are a true professional, and it's great to have someone with your skill sets on our team as we embark upon this new chapter of our mobility options. So thank you for all you do.
Thank you.
Okay, questions. Commissioner Warren, President Ward, and then Commissioner Fox.
Thank you. And I know that this makes my colleagues that sit on the TPA extremely happy, Commissioners Fox and Commissioner Peduzzi. In the last 3 years, this has been tremendous to see the 180 that we've taken as it relates to this, and going from the system that we had in place to this one really is a forward-thinking approach, is very proactive in how we're addressing the changing environment. It's, I've had several experiences, and I've ridden on the van, which was probably my least favorite of all of them. I've also used the app to call for circuit. I've had several challenges with receiving transportation there. I will say that 100% of the time, Rose Trolley did show up and get me where I needed to be the way that they identified that they would. So that was a wonderful experience. I know that we're looking at this and how we're moving people downtown and moving people to businesses and looking at commerce. But what I see when I look at this is a true opportunity to connect people to resources that they may not have had access to connect people to the grocery store. So I was happy to hear you say that there were so many people that that rode the transportation to Publix. We'll see, and I don't know if this information is being captured, but I believe that there are people that will have access to the local jobs that are being created that may not have had the ease of use and ease of mobility prior to this. So when we're looking at it, but I think that there's so many other things that benefit our community from this, and I think that it's wonderful that we have approached this the way that we have, and that we're continuing to adapt and make the adjustments that are needed for the larger population. So thank you. Thank you for the work that you're doing.
President Ward.
Thank you, and thank you for the presentation. I'm very excited about this, and I can't wait to see where we go from this. I had a couple questions. One, with regards to the shuttle, and I'm forgetting which month we did the test, but given that it was not as warm, are we concerned? I know it says AC is optional. I'm assuming we would definitely be going that route because it wasn't as hot as it was when we did the testing. And I know I talked to you about my preference was the e-bus. It goes more in line with other cities that have had great transit options. But if this is the e-shuttle is a way cheaper option, and I get it. If people like that, fantastic. I'm just nervous about we weren't in our heavy rain season and we weren't in heavy heat season. So curious on your thoughts on that and whether people's minds may change. And then I'm looking at your graph on 10, there was that huge spike in the cost per fixed rider in February and March and going down in April. What did that stem from?
Your 10 is different than my 10.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay.
Oh, slide 20. Sorry, I was on page 10.
Okay.
My bad.
Okay, ask the question again?
That spike in cost per fixed rider that happened in the first quarter of 24, March, it looks like it jumps up.
Okay, you aren't the first person to ask that question, so thanks for the good the good prep. The numbers, the ridership is so small, it's so low on the fixed route that a change in ridership by a couple of people is going to exaggerate the percentage of the increase in the cost per rider. So that's really what you're seeing. So I don't have the number for that particular month, but you can see, if you get really close, that that is a very low ridership that month. I don't know the reason why. That's actually one of the things that, that's a challenge for us, the why of a lot of these data points. And moving forward, like to have a more robust data collection system that is able to do the analysis to give me those answers.
Yeah, that is one of the challenges, and that's why when we put out a new solicitation, the data and how it's reported and how it's analyzed is going to be a key part. Another example that I questioned the data was when you had the increase, or you had the addition of the fares to Palm Beach from the DDA vehicles, we saw the decrease in the number of cancellations, which is good. You would think that would lead to also an increase in the wait times, but it did not. And I don't know the answer to why not, because that logically you would think you'd have less wait times if you have more cancellations. So we need to make sure that we have robust, not just data, but data analysis and why these things are occurring. And we just haven't been able to get that from the provider.
Well, let me ask you something, because you mentioned that we're going to use this data as part of the selection process, but if we don't have confidence in the data, would that lead to an improper selection?
Well, I think it depends on the data. So we do have confidence, like the number of riders, the wait times, those things are accurate and they're collected just electronically. What I think is missing is the analysis of the data.
Correct. So order of magnitude, we have enough data. We know where people are going. We know where they want to go. And, we have the average wait time. Those are generally accurate. But it's the analysis that we're currently struggling with.
So when we go putting out the RFP, we're going to rely upon the responders to also provide that analysis. Is that part of their scope of services?
Oh, yes. That's what we would like to do, yes.
Okay. Commissioner Fox.
Thank you so much for all the work that you've put into this. I've been to many of your meetings, Jessica, and I do want a round of applause for you because it's been amazing and so well attended. I appreciate everything that you've done to collect the feedback. And also I'm looking at this map, and I love how we have expanded sort of our equity zone to include many other areas where transportation is more limited or people don't have cars. I think it's both going to help people who don't have another way to get around, but also it's going to help keep cars on the road, off the road to people that are coming downtown to the Green Market or things like that from Roosevelt Estates. It's so close, like they should have a way to get here without having another car on the road. So I really appreciate that. I have a couple questions, and also I wanted to second what Commissioner Ward said. It was one of the points I was going to make. I have been on the bus several times, and it's very full every time I've gotten on it. It's not my favorite either. Sometimes I think it's like a scary ice cream van, and it's too dark. You can't see inside. I thought we had kind of decided that the windows were going to be more see-through, and they haven't, I think, ever made it that way. So, but when I get on, it's full, and I have wondered in my head why it looks so full versus when the last days of the trolleys, sometimes I would get on, there would not be one other person on the trolley. And I wonder if it's because of the air condition. And so when I look at the question about the shuttle and the CUTE bus, I think it was November or December when we were testing those. And I really hesitate to make this huge purchase based on people thinking, it did have more of an airy feel, like getting on Rose Trolley or Circuit, where people could get in and out and see who was in it. But I feel like the van is also different than this other shuttle. So I feel like we maybe want to reconsider that. But my question was going to be also about the fixed route. So I'm looking at some of the maps. Slide 35, for example, it looks like we have some going maybe on Dixie, and then some also going on Palm Beach Lakes. Is that correct? I can't tell. Like some of you have some blue vans and some yellow vans. I'm trying to decide what the difference is between.
Can you tell me what
those.
slide number?
Slide 35. So it looks like there's some blue vans that maybe are coming on Palm Beach Lakes, and then there's some yellow vans that are going on
Okay.
Dixie. Is that two different fixed routes?
So the orange route the orange lines that you see, those are existing Palm Trans service for context. The blue line that's running north and south, that's conceptual. I don't have a street selected. It is to drive home the point that it is a north-south service, and there's lots of yellow buses on it to illustrate that it is high frequency. If you look on the orange lines that are the Palm Tran, there's only one bus on it to illustrate low frequency. Sorry for the confusion. But can I address, I want to address your concerns relate to the shuttles, because you both brought up a very good point. The shuttle, which has been overwhelmingly the preferred vehicle, when we brought it down, it was freezing and raining that day. I had a blanket with me. And despite it being cold and rainy and open air, completely open air, because if we, I could go back to the picture, but if you look at it, that was the demo. It had no doors, it had no rain guards, it had nothing. And I, coming out of that demo, was certain that people were going to be like, absolutely not. We don't want this. We want the other vehicle, because it was closed and protecting. But they still preferred, in the cold, rainy weather, the open air vehicle. But your point about the hot temperatures is well taken. What I can tell you is that I have visited other cities that have the open air vehicles, and people aren't complaining about that as an issue.
Well, let me add also that vehicles is one of the big challenges. As Jessica mentioned, one of the things we are going to be looking for is if it meets the Buy America requirements, that we can then apply for grants to be able to acquire some of the vehicles. As an example, we have a TPA grant that we were awarded a long time ago to get trolleys and put additional bus or trolley stops. We haven't been able to use that because we transitioned away from the trolley, and it was just a number of things. But Buy America is one of the challenges with that grant, and there are just not many options right now that meet that, unfortunately. If you go to like European cities or other parts of the world, there's all kinds of really interesting shuttle options. We just don't have that in the United States that are built in the U.S. Now, if we move towards, at some point, if there's a surtax transition from the infrastructure to transportation surtax, or these impact fees, that may provide us the flexibility in the future to be able to be a little more outside the box when it comes to acquisition of vehicles. But for right now, with our limited budget, we're going to have to try to focus in on things that meet the compliance requirements for federal grants, because that will likely be at least one of the sources that we use.
I'd also like to add is that part of that package where we're asking the proposers is propose some vehicles. This is what they do. And they may have already identified something that we haven't. We have worked with consultants. I've been to countless conferences, and I've connected with people. But there's certainly more out there that we can learn about.
Let me go to some who haven't spoken. Commissioner Lambert.
Thank you. Thank you so much. This is extremely exciting to see. I love that we're focusing on a premier writer service. I think that, that's what our residents and visitors are demanding and are used to. And I love the idea of starting the program strong and making sure that we put a good story out there so that people have a good experience from day one, and that they can, begin to tell others about it so that we have good ridership. I love the idea of, I think that it's called like the last mile, where that's the on-demand and then getting them to a fixed route, obviously focusing on efficiency. I'm curious, what other cities have we looked at that have done this successfully? Because I would think people are used to Uber taking me from point A to point B, not taking me, to a point B that then takes me to C.
So I had the pleasure of, this is something that I had thought about in my mind of many thoughts, but it's already happening in cities that are bringing on new service. Is they're moving over to an integrated system, and I had the pleasure of using a system in Park City, Utah, And I was just really surprised by how simple it was, seeing the transit vehicles filled and all types of people using it. And so I was able to have my personal experience on that system, but there are other cities that are migrating to the integrated system as well.
So would our system integrate with Palm Tran and a county system?
It's possible. The technology exists.
Yeah, that would be the ideal. As was mentioned, the example, if you're going from point A to point B, and the most efficient fixed route is the Palm Tran, then it would take you to that Palm Tran stop as opposed to our stop, if that is the quickest way to get to your final destination.
Right, and the chances probably are pretty low that it's going to choose Palm Tran because it has such low frequency on some of those routes. It could be a probability on Route 1, the bus Route 1, because that is has decent frequency. But the other lines is highly improbable that it would connect until Palm Tran increases their frequency.
I do want to add, we have regular meetings, we have quarterly meetings with the county and with Palm Tran, and Palm Tran and the county are also part of the WPB Go.
Yes, the Mobility Coalition, WPB.
The Mobility
Go.
Coalition. So these are ongoing discussions with them as well. We've talked about, was there a way to enhance their services with us assisting? It's just very expensive to run their service for various reasons, but we are in constant discussion with them, so they're around the table.
Thank you. And Jessica, I appreciate you mentioning some of the feedback from residents about parking. I wonder if you can just talk a little bit more about what are some solutions or thoughts
Right.
around that.
So I previously worked for the city of Coral Gables, and we had a similar issue. And as the fixed route system popularity increased and the on-demand service popularity increased, people were driving and parking in the area of the fixed route transit. And residential permit parking is really the solution for that. It addressed the issue immediately. That would be my go-to simply because it worked so easily before. I'm sure there are other ways to manage it, but that's an inexpensive way to address it quickly.
And luckily, you all approved that recently, so.
President Ward.
Thank you. I wanted to go back to that conversation about Buy America compliant. If we're looking to outsource, wouldn't those companies that we're outsourcing be purchasing the vehicles, not us?
There's different ways to do it. There's potential of us having the vehicles and then operating those vehicles for us on our behalf, or there's the possibility of them. Generally, they wouldn't purchase the vehicles. They would then be kind of a lease. It's just part of the whole package, is my understanding of that, normally how that works.
Yeah, so there's multiple ways to do it. There is that we could require the proposer to already have the vehicles, or we can have them purchase them for us, but we would purchase them with our grant, and they would operate them, if that's really just what you said. But we have this grant, we want to make use of it. But the Buy America component is the non-negotiable at this point in time if we're using grant funding at all. Everything is Buy America compliant.
And the problem is we would not be able, if we did that option where the provider is providing the vehicle and we're just paying like a package deal to basically lease it, which is what we're doing now with the circuit, then we don't have the ability to go after grants for that because no grant will pay for that part of it.
Okay, follow up.
Yes.
So when we're talking about looking to test during this prior period of time, we're going to make the investment, just in theory, in the e-shuttle for $100,000 for Circuit to then utilize until their contract expires? Is that what we're discussing right now?
Yes.
Okay.
But that could be if the vehicle is popular and efficient and we like it, that would then be potentially the vehicle we go with. But we don't know yet, no.
Commissioner Buzzi, you haven't spoken yet.
Thank you. When we're talking about the potential for grant funding, are we talking about this TPA grant that was given to us some time ago?
That's one of them, and when we'd go after other grants as well.
Okay, and the TPA grant, do you have an idea of what that funding is, how much it is, and Is there an expiration date? Is it still available to us?
Those are great questions. I've been actively working with the TPA and also with SFRTA, who is the administrator. They know that we are anxious to use the money. So yes, it is available to us.
And there is no set expiration. But we don't want to keep it out there that I know of.
And it's about $1 million.
Thank you.
Commissioner Warren? No?
I was really going to reiterate some of the points that Commissioner Fox made. And when I've ridden the fixed route vans, this is just an observation, there seemed to be a lot of people on the vans that did not necessarily have destinations. So I don't know if that's something that we're...
So that is something that has been brought up many times. And one of the questions that I ask in all of the meetings is, are you willing to pay to use the service? And then I ask them by show of hands if they're willing, who's willing to pay 50 cents, who's willing to pay 75 cents, who's willing to pay $1, who's willing to pay $2. So they seem to be ready to pay $1 to use the service.
Yeah, I think that would help cut down on that issue for sure.
Commissioner Lambert, then Commissioner.
I think this is a valuable conversation about the type of product that we're going to be using. And I'm curious, do you have the numbers of the people who were polled about the use of the two different types?
I'm sorry, I don't.
The two different
vehicles.
The
You
two
have
different
the-
vehicles.
Oh, I don't have that.
I mean, was it?
We do have that.
Was
I
it
do have
under
the information, I don't
100?
have
Was
it.
it hundreds?
I would have to go upstairs and grab that. But we had, yeah, I'd have to go upstairs and grab it.
We'll send it to you.
All right, Commissioner Fox?
Thank you. Let's see. I guess my question is, so when you are looking at the new kind of maps that I'm very happy to see the expansion, and obviously we can always expand further, but I'm curious, a lot of the places that people are going, like Publix right now, is on our, we have that now as an option, but we don't have the outlet mall as an option. So we don't know that 600 people would go to that outlet mall if there was a fixed route. So I guess I'm just curious in terms of, we know 600 people are going to Publix because right now we have that on the circuit option, but we don't have, let's say, other places, the Science Center or the outlet mall or whatever. So I guess how could we determine going forward whether or not we're picking the best fixed routes that the most amount of people, I'm just thinking about, a lot of people downtown maybe work in the outlet mall, and that might be somewhere they would go if they knew that was going to be an option. But just curious how we're going to decide that going forward.
So prior to presenting what we're presenting today, we have shown the community fixed route that goes east-west, that does go to the outlets. We've gotten feedback based on that. That was a study that was conducted by Sam Schwartz and recommended. I didn't show that today, but when we advertise the RFP or RFQ, that will be part of the package for the proposers to consider to determine whether or not that maybe we should be shrinking. Right now we're showing a very large green area, everything that is east of 95, and they may come back and tell us that maybe you shouldn't go so far south. You should go a little bit further west, and we'll leave that up to the proposers to tell us.
Okay, any other questions? We have an idea of what the next steps are. I'm sure we will.
We'll give you further
briefed
updates, Mayor, on
as
once we get
we-
closer to when we're close to issuing an RFQ, RFP, and what that's going to look like, so you all can comment
Yeah,
on that.
let's keep in mind, as with all of our RFPs, we are looking for a component for small women and minority-owned businesses. So
That's
let's
required.
make sure that is part of that process.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you very much for
Thank
the
you.
presentation. All right, EPL system, I guess Commissioner Ward, President Ward, you want to tee this up? as to what your concerns were?
Yes, thank you. Overall, just when anything is adopted and new in the city, I feel like we don't get to kind of have an overall discussion about how it's going. Is it meeting what we were trying to do? I know I had initially, and I don't know about the other commissioners, had received some concerns, which are normal. Anytime anybody adopts a new system, there's learning curves and things like that. But given we've had it for a little while, I thought it would be useful to kind of go over it and see, hey, how's it going? Is there anything missing? And just, I'm sure Mr. Green has a PowerPoint for us.
I do. Rick Green, Development Services Director. I'm joined by Robert Brown, our building official. And I would love to walk everyone through the EPL system. And just to provide a little historical context, we had been using, up until this past year, the Community Plus software system. So when you got on that system, you would see a choice of 4 menus. You could click on an address. You would get the history of permits for that particular site. The challenge we've had is this system, this software was in place for 25 years, very antiquated. We were taking a Band-Aid approach every time an issue came up that required fixing, and very few jurisdictions were actually using this. So finding consultants that would help us with this system became very problematic. So we went through a bid process, and then on December 17, 2018, we awarded a new software bid to Tyler Technologies out of Texas. They were intended to replace our Community Plus system with, at the time it was called EnerGov. It has since switched to EPL, which stands for Enterprise Permitting and Licensing. So the system, again, is paid entirely through building fund revenue, so nothing is coming out of the general fund. So what we initially did, and again, we were 4 years putting the program together. There were probably 120 people involved in the city, 12 different departments roughly. And the first thing we did over that long period of time is we took every workflow, every process that we had that was going to be impacted by EPL and tried to streamline that process. So the plan review permitting process that might be 58 plus steps, we condensed it to a smaller number. And this was an example. In some cases, we've refined this even more. And then you see some of the issues and some of the topics that we tried to address. So it's more than just development services. It's many other departments were involved in this process. So again, we began with the workflows and trying to streamline each one of them. So under the old system, under Community Plus, somebody would submit at our front counter. They'd come to City Hall, submit a set of paper plans for a permit. And in no particular order, it would generally go through a zoning review, a building review, mechanical, plumbing, and these plans would be passed from one branch, if you will, or one section to the other. Under the EPL system, because everything is electronic, a set of plans gets downloaded into our system, and then there's a simultaneous review that goes on among all the trades. So when changes are made, each of the other trades... I'm sorry?
What is that? That figure,
It is a person holding a set of plans.
Oh, okay, wow.
Is that art?
All right, I see the head.
See it?
now.
You
Okay,
see it?
thank you.
Abstract.
What the hell is that? Okay. Thank you, Rick.
All right. We did a caricature of a person who brings in a lot of
What is
plans,
that?
and she looked just
Okay,
like
I see the
that.
arm now, okay.
So again, just some of the different workflows that you see here. Simply with planning, we've got 5 different applications for site plans. Downtown Master Plan has 17 different workflows, again, depending on the type of project coming in. Same with building permit. You see we have 16 different types of applications under one class for commercial. You have another 15 for residential. You have your individual trades. Engineering, the same thing. There's an engineering approval, different types of right-of-way permits, and this is just a small sampling. Police, the same with code enforcement. So this goes on, and again, we probably at least a dozen different departments are impacted with certain processes that they use. So it's important that we made this switch as well because, as everybody knows, during COVID, we were experiencing a tremendous amount of growth, the highest we've ever encountered during COVID as part of what we call the COVID migration. So even today, the fiscal year we're in now, you see that while it's not matching the great activity we had the last 2 years, it's still significantly high and higher than we've experienced in the past. And then an exercise I like to do, if you offset building permits by 2 years, you see the direct correlation between building permits and our tax base. It follows the same trend, where it was decreasing during the recession, 2007, 2008, just like our permit value was dropping 2 years later. We saw our tax base drop, and it's been going up consistently ever since then. So from the employee's perspective, this is what you will see with one of the 120 or so people using EPL today within the city. Oops, I'm hitting the wrong one, sorry. So you have a home page. So the home page will tell you what is in the queue, whether you have tasks, whether you have permits, whether you have inspections. You can cater this a million different ways. You can color code it however you like. But this notifies each person, and I won't say each planner, each building inspector, because it involves a variety of different departments. But you will see what's in the queue for yourself. You have a general page, so if you want to click on permits, and I'm using the example of 300 Banyan, which is a Class A office building that's being built at the southwest corner of Banyan and Olive Avenue. It'll show you the building permit activity. You can see what you want to click on. And then if you like, you can click on one of these tabs. If you click on the one on the top right here, you get this drop-down menu, and then there's a variety of different things you can look at. So let's say you wanted to look at an address. That's the building in question that's under construction today. If you click on search addresses, then you will get a GIS map, and the GIS map will color code, as you see outlined in red, where the building is. You see all the properties around it. And then let's say there's a permit submitted for that particular building. You see all the permits submitted for the project. If you wanted to look at one in particular, this happens to be a revision. You can click on that, and then everybody within City Hall will see an actual workflow. So you see the progress. You see the progress of where that is. In this case, it's 35% complete. You see on the left here the workflow of what is each step in the process here, and then you have a series of options. So if you wanted to look at a particular plan, you can click on Files, and then you could see everything that's been submitted. So in this case, if I wanted to look at the architectural plans and see what this revision is about, I can go to the architectural plans right here. I click on that, and then you'll get a set of, you get a PDF of the actual architectural plans. And then again, this is what our staff will be reviewing. In this particular case, this is an interior staircase that's connecting floors 11 through 12 as part of that building. But you could do that for any revision, any plan that's coming in. You can also hit citywide addresses and get an idea of what the addresses are in and around the property that you're looking at. So you see all the addresses along Banyan, Clematis Street. You can extend that a little further, north or south if you like. And then the function that I particularly use a lot is the system-wide reports. So this is something that we are continuing to work on, but we have a series of probably 50 or 60 different reports. They could be plan-based, they could be permit-based. This is one, a part of the options that you have to choose from. I like to use the plan listing. You see on the right some of the reports that you can generate. I show one of these to the mayor and to the city administrator every month. So I click on plan listing. You can quantify the dates. So if I wanted to look at everything that was submitted in May, you identify your range, May 1st to May 31st, and then you get a report. In this particular case, we received 47 separate applications, and you could do this for any time frame. You can do the fiscal year, a 1-week period, a 3-month period, and then below each one of these where the, you can't see here, but if you go into a print mode, you will see the details. Oops. You see the details of every permit that came in. Another report you can run, I just happened to run this out of curiosity. Again, this took all of 5 minutes through EPL. These are all the permits that were submitted for the first half of this fiscal year, just to kind of give you an idea. We just received our PAPA numbers from last year. We had $680 million worth of new construction last year. You can see through the first 2 months, we've got $352 million. Why is this jumping like that? But you see that through the first 6 months of this fiscal year, we're at 352. So we're right in line with where we were last year. You go to the very top, you'll see that we received 650 commercial permits. The residential almost double that, but the value of the permits you see are shown in the green, 198 million for commercial. So you can run all kinds of reports, whatever time frame you like. So I really like this system-wide reports function. If you want to look at building permits by commission district over the last 4 years, think in your mind which district had the most permits in terms of sheer number. It's District 5, followed by Downtown District 3, followed by District 4, District 1, and District 2. And what's interesting on this, you see the rank of each of the districts over the last 4 years has not changed. District 5 has had the most number because of the geographic area, followed by 3. But you get interesting reports, and this is as of June 13th for this year. And Ms. Johnson, I'm going to get you more detail on other things like this that you had asked for. You can break down the number of permits, so you can do all type of KPI, key performance indicators, to find out the breakdown of the permits. I had our licensing and permit supervisor, Jonathan Marchand, run some numbers for me, and you see reflected in the blue color, this is the number of walk-in permits or walk-in tickets that we have. So when people come in and they need assistance from our front counter right across the hall, they pull a ticket, part of a system called QFlow, and you see that peaked at 1442. When we went live, then the number of people walking into City Hall gradually reduced. So we went from an average of 1,251 people coming into City Hall down to 1,000, and we hope as people become more familiar with EPL, that number will go down even further. Parking director might not like that, but it makes it easier for our citizens. So from the customer standpoint, there's a learning curve, obviously, as Commissioner Ward mentioned. So I think as people are becoming more and more familiar with the process, virtually every time I have a meeting with a developer, I always ask them, how are you relating to EPL? And lately, the feedback has been extremely positive. They're more familiar with it. Each of the bigger developers have people that are focused on permitting, and they're much more familiar with it. And it doesn't hurt that other cities like Miami, Orlando, have also switched over to EPL, so they're doing it there, although ours is a little different. But from the civic, what we call the civic access portal, so this is what the customer sees. So you can go on our website to get to EPL. Again, it's specifically designed for the ease and efficiency of our customers. When we started this process, we were thinking more of the customer in mind, not so much the employee who's going to be reviewing the plans. So they have a series of options as to what they want to do. They can pick and choose. We have a series of tutorials online too, so if you're using EPL for the first time, you can go to the tutorial and it'll give you a step-by-step process of how to submit a permit, how to submit a plan. You get a home page that gives you several options of what you want to do. If you want to submit a permit, if you want to submit plans, you click on this and this will give you a very easy step-by-step way of getting through this. And then we have what we call an application assistant. So as you begin to work through the process, you pick on what type of permit you want to do, whether it's commercial, whether it's residential, and there's a series of steps that'll walk you through. And these are all the different options, different things you can click on Civic Access. These are just a few of the things. So even things like a variance in the downtown master plan, depending on what you want to do, there's 3 different applications. So the application assistant will hone you in as to what you need to do, and the application will be there and walk you through. Like the citizen or like the City Hall employee, there will be a dashboard for the customer. So again, if they've got an application pending with the city, whether it's one permit or several permits, it'll show what applications are pending, where we are with the reviews, what inspections may be required, and what the invoices are for whatever process they're going through. There's also a work tab. So again, if you've got several items pending, you could have a variance, a site plan. It'll manage all of the activities that you were particularly working on, so you can keep track of multiple functions within the work tab function. The system also allows you to upload plans, so you can upload plans, documents. You can even upload photos. So if you have photos of the Boston Celtics, you can upload that if that's needed for some reason. And then the Work tab, again, will walk you through, and then you see a summary of all the different functions you have through the customer portal. I'll also mention, too, that, again, because this is funded solely by the builders and our development permits, we periodically meet with the builders group, and there was a House bill that was passed several years ago, 2019, House Bill 127, that basically said the city cannot budget and spend, they cannot collect more money than they spend over a rolling 4-year average. So we keep track of everything that we budget, we keep track of everything that we spend, and then we meet with this builders group periodically, and we've been doing this for over a decade now. The legislation says that if you had a group in place as of January 1st, 2019, which we did, they will allow you to collect more money than you're actually spending. So we met with the builders group in September of last year. We had identified how we were going to spend some of the excess revenue that we collected. In that case, we collected almost $6.7 million, given the big boom that I talked about earlier during COVID. So a lot of this is going toward EPL. We have yet to migrate our business tax system into EPL. We're doing that right now, so we'll have that operational by the end of the year. So when we do our business tax renewals this time next year, that'll be part of EPL. But part of what we've done is also assemble and collect 25 years of historical data through Community Plus, and that has been downloaded into our EPL system. That took a great amount of time. We did not want to lose that historical data for each parcel. So we walked through this with the builders last year. They were confident and pleased with what we were doing and the progress we were making with EPL. We met again just last May 22nd and updated some of the numbers that we had shared with them in September. We weren't that far off, and a lot of these numbers are going to be incorporated into the fiscal year 25 budget that you're seeing. But again, it's all coming out of the building permit fund, and it's not coming out of the general fund. So a lot has happened. I think we're making good progress. I think for the most part, people are very satisfied with the system. As the city employees become more familiar with it, just like as the residents and developers become more familiar with the process, it's becoming easier. What we're doing now is really spending a lot of time trying to fine-tune the workflows. If we can eliminate several steps within the process, if we can come up with some shortcuts that make the review times much easier, we're going to continue to manipulate that over time. So I'll be happy to answer any questions. Robert, is there anything that you want to mention that I didn't touch upon? Or
Just briefly, so from the customer perspective, you can, the reason for bringing forward the data from the old system is so that the customer can research and find the whole history of a property in the one system, rather than asking staff, what information do you have from your old system? So that, added years to the program, to get implemented, but it was definitely worth doing, and that may be where some of the concerns have risen. Is getting this off the ground means you've got to migrate that data, test the data back and forth, back and forth. Another thing that may have caused some problems initially is with this system you have to create an account. So if you want to apply for permits, you create an account. Of course, we couldn't do that until we went live, and initially there was a backlog of getting people, contractors, owners into the system. That's behind us now, and we're now maintaining that and adding new businesses. But you can imagine on July 31st, when we kicked this off, everyone had to get entered into the system before they could start to make progress. Online, when you're looking for records, you can look at code enforcement records. You can look at plans, which is the planning approval process. You can look at permits, which is building, also engineering services. So the customer interface is much better than it was before with the old system. And another good thing about the EPL program is that it's current. There's a lot of cities using it, and there's also what's called the Tyler community, which is out there. So if we have problems or if there are things that we want to implement, we can bounce ideas off of other jurisdictions and vice versa. So rather than having a system that we were using pretty much on our own or not with very many other cities using it, we're now current, and along with safety in numbers. There's a lot of cities that are using and counties that are using this system, and so I think the customer service experience has improved immensely since we first kicked off, and we've been receiving good feedback about that.
Questions, President Ward?
Thank you for that overview. I appreciate it. And I think that, there was that, the comments have kind of died down a little bit because there was that issue in the beginning. And I think that's sometimes hesitation for any organization to adopt new software is the hassle of getting everybody updated on that. And I know you guys have done a couple YouTube videos and things like that, which I think is very helpful. But can you tell me a little bit more about day to day? Are you guys able to answer more do you have that data of like, okay, we're getting 100 requests per however long, and originally we weren't able to answer all those, and now we've, our performance and efficiency has gone up whatever percent. You guys, have you been looking at it?
Yeah, through the system-wide reports, we can run a whole variety of different reports, so we can do that. And to touch upon what you just asked, Commissioner, and what Robert alluded to, is that when we went live July 31st of last year, we had several permits we had a lot of permits that were submitted before we went live. So when we went live, we had to manually convert, I think it was 800 permits or some crazy number, from the old system to the new system. And that caused the real hiccup in our system in that we were having to do the physical conversion from Community Plus into EPL while we're still reviewing the new permits that were submitted under the new system. So admittedly, there was probably a 2 or 3 month period we were playing a lot of catch up, we were falling behind. But generally, through the system-wide reports, we can run all kinds of analysis. If there's something in particular you'd like to know, we can see if we can run it. If not, we can have reports run. So 2 of the reports that we just finished with the help of IT is that we have to report to the county how many permits have come in. That used to be a real challenge for our management analysts. Now with the report that's written, we can hit a couple buttons and that report gets generated automatically. And I know the mayor and Faye got that when we were late in getting those permit numbers together, they'd get a letter. Reporting to the state too, we can also report the revenue and the amount of permits that are coming in too. So it's made our life a little bit easier, yeah.
Any other questions, Commissioner Lambert?
Just a comment. I just want to, say thank you to the administration and to this dais because, whether it is streamlining rideshare or our permitting system, I think that it's important that we continue to focus on efficiency and that sometimes there's a little bit of headache in getting there, but, the time and effort and financial resources that we put into this in the beginning will pay dividends on the end for our residents and stakeholders. So thank you so much for all you've done.
President Ward?
Sorry. And by the way, the business tax renewal, that'll be great to have in the system. I think that'll be, I'm assuming, an easier way to track if somebody doesn't renew and we can kind of find out what's going on there. So that's fantastic. You'd mentioned other cities like Orlando and Miami have the same system, but that there's some differences. Do you know the major differences of?
You want to?
Okay, so one of the joys of this system is it's infinitely configurable. And so although you buying a system out of the box, as you implement, you make a lot of decisions about how you'll do your implementation, how you'll use it, what your workflows is a big word now for us, what your workflows are going to look like, and you do that with your implementation consultant who works for Energov. Every city will have done it slightly differently. So there's a general look and feel that's the same, but how each city or county has made their system, has implemented their system, will change how it works. And the idea is that the system can adapt to your business model so that the business model that the city or the county wants to have is reflected in the implementation, and that's why they're different.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Rick, Robert, thank you very much. Very in-depth and informative presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, item 3, Jefferson Terminal District Master Plan. Commissioners Lambert and Fox, you all brought this up, so I'll give each of you a chance to express what your concerns were, starting with you, Commissioner Lambert.
Thank you. Just, as we continue to grow this area, always looking to make sure that we're being thoughtful in the process and that we have a plan moving forward. I think it's an exciting part of our city and a great place to grow.
Mr. Fox?
Thank you. I don't really have anything to add other than it was originally Commissioner Lambert's district and then it was mine. And so I think we're both just looking for updates for the future. Thank you.
Okay.
Again, Rick Green, just to provide a quick update. So back in 2018, we started receiving a lot of interest in what we're calling the Jefferson Terminal District. A lot of folks looking at possibly developing within that district. Particularly with land prices increasing downtown, people were looking at the JTD as an area, as an alternative location for development. And they started asking our staff a little question. So with the development of the Grandview Market and ultimately the District Flats, we started to see some renewed interest in the JTD. So at the time, we approached the former mayor and asked if we could initiate just a quick study on our own just to look at things like development capacity, traffic, land use, among other factors. So we started working on the Jefferson Terminal District. We met with neighbors, and then when COVID hit, given the influx of development activity, we kind of put everything on hold for a while. And then over the past year, we realized that we need to get back to JTD and finish up the study that we had begun. We had done a lot of analysis. And then with that, you know, between myself, Alex and Dodie, we kind of were back on it. So I'd like to have Alex do a quick overview of where we are right now.
Thank you, Rick. For the record, Alex Hansen, City's Comprehensive Planner with the Planning Division. So just a little bit of reference. Geographically, this is the location for the Jefferson Terminal District. It is over 150 acres. It is physically bounded. It is very well delineated. You have a number of major roads, infrastructure that is surrounding the district. That is a positive as well as presents some challenges. To the north, we have Okeechobee Boulevard. To the east, we have a combination of the Florida railroad tracks, also Parker Avenue, as well as the Stub Canal. To the southwest, the district is limited by I-95, and to the northwest, you have Australian Avenue. A little bit of history. There's already references in newspapers in the 1920s about what was called then the Jefferson terminals. The development at the time included a combination of some small-scale residential uses, some commercial areas, as well as some industrial activities, somewhat similar to the mix of uses that we have right now. Maybe lesser scale, but you already have those activities. And one of the reasons why this district was fairly prominent back then is that it acted or benefited from the regional axis because it was next to the railroad tracks, it was next to the Stub Canal. And those two pieces of infrastructure basically allow for this to be considered terminals, transportation terminals, regional transportation terminals. So items were being brought through the canal or to the railroad tracks. So hence the name Jefferson Terminals. And again, we're talking over 100 years ago now of this area being developed. One of the big assets of the Jefferson Terminal District is its proximity to major destinations. It is very close to Tri-Rail, City Hall, downtown in general, the Palm Beach International Airport, Palm Beach Atlantic University. So it is within just a few minutes, either walking, driving, or biking from these destinations. One of the things that we're going to discuss in a few minutes is, while it is very close geographically to many of these areas, sometimes it can be a little bit of a challenge getting in and out of the district and to and from these different destinations because of some of this geographic delineation that I pointed out earlier. As far as the zoning, most of the district, this is roughly 2/3 of the district, has industrial zoning, and then the other third has commercial or residential. So the industrial areas are mostly this area here in gray, and then we have the commercial areas to the northwest and the southeast, and on the western part is primarily residential uses. As far as the large landowners, this map depicts the parcels that are over 2 acres, or the owners that control more than 2 acres. The largest landowner in the district is the city of West Palm Beach. So out of the 150 acres of the district, the city controls roughly 25 acres. That is 1/6 of all the land in the district. After that is Florida Power and Light, and then we have a number of property owners that have 3 2 acres. One of them is also the town of Palm Beach. They have their public works facilities right there. Major developments. Rick mentioned the Grandview Market, which was developed several years ago. In addition, we have this major public storage. So these are some developments that happened over a decade ago. But more recently, we have had several projects, several significant projects that either have been built or have been approved for the district. They include the District Flats, which was constructed about 3 years ago, a significant residential project. Then we had Mercer Park 2, another residential project that was built about 1.5 to 2 years ago. And then we have, that was Mercer Park, and then Mercer Park 2, which is a residential development that includes a significant workforce housing component that was approved within the last few months. So over the last 3 years, we have had a number of new developments either built or approved in this area. So we're seeing kind of a significant amount of development happening recently in the district. We believe that there's going to be an increase in options, development options in the district just because of some new requirements, some new legislation, some new changes to the code. A few weeks ago, Doty presented some of the new workforce housing and affordable workforce housing provisions that are going to be incorporated into the code. This would allow for additional density, multifamily areas, as well as some residential uses for some non-residential areas if they meet certain requirements, certain conditions, including affordability and income levels. Most areas of the Jefferson Terminal District would qualify for this program. And this is, my understanding, is going to be going in front of the City Commission next month for adoption. In addition, we have the state's Live Local legislation that was adopted initially last year. Then there were some revisions in this year's legislative cycle that would also allow for residential projects in some of the areas within the Jefferson Terminal District if they meet certain requirements. Finally, the Jefferson Terminal District is a receiving area for off-site workforce projects as part of the Downtown Master Plan Housing Incentive Program. This is something that was adopted 2.5 years ago. And again, this is one of the 2 areas where these off-site projects could be developed. So we have a number of housing programs, housing legislation that would allow future development in the Jefferson Terminal District. And we think that that is going to, again, incentivize or spur even more development happening already in here. I just referenced some of the development activity that happened in the boundaries of the district over the last few years. But we have had a number of projects within the surrounding area to the Jefferson Terminal District. And this is, again, just within half a mile, less than a mile of the area. We have a number of projects that are either under construction, were already approved, or are under review currently. So development is happening in the district and in the areas just outside of the district. Access. Just like I mentioned earlier, the district is very well bounded. Again, we have all these different roads, canals, railroad tracks that delineate the district. But we also have some challenges. One of them is access. There's only 4 access points to the Jefferson Terminal District. We have Old Okeechobee Road to Parker Avenue, which is the access point in the northeast. Then on the eastern part, we have the access from Caroline into Parker. Then we have, on the northwestern section of the district, we have the Mercer to Australian. And then finally, to the south, we have the Mercer access to Belvedere Road. This presents some difficulties. Again, getting in and out of the district can be difficult. if you're in a car, or if you're a pedestrian or a cyclist, in good part because of, again, this limited number of access, and also some of the infrastructure associated with those access points. There's several city projects that are going to be impacting, in a positive way, we think, the Jefferson Terminal District. One of them is the future improvements for Old Okeechobee Road and Parker at the intersection. This here. This is a project associated with some rail safety. I know Kevin Volbrick from Engineering Services presented this item a couple months ago. So the improvements that are proposed for this area, and some of this is, again, associated with rail safety, the Fern Street connection. This is also going to enhance not only safety, but connectivity for the district. Again, this includes sidewalks, some different improvements at signalized, making this a signalized intersection, so it'll make it safer and easier for people to get in and out of the district. Another project that is in the early design stage is the improvements for Caroline and Parker. These are a few of the conceptual designs that our engineering services has been working on. And again, this is going to, one of the main goals is also to enhance safety at this area, and it's going to also enhance access to and from the district. There's a few other city projects. Some of these are in the district. Some of the other ones are outside of the district, but that we think are going to benefit it. Again, we are talking the Howard Park Community Center replacement. There's a stormwater study for the city property. I referenced those 25 acres that the city owns. There's a stormwater study that is going to look at potential improvements from a stormwater standpoint for that property. There's also some stormwater improvements for Pineapple Park and for the Flamingo Park neighborhood. These are all, again, in close proximity to the district. Some of the issues that we want to discuss with the commission today is, first, whether there's a need for substantial changes to the land use for this district. One of the discussion points pre-COVID, 2018, 2019, was whether there was a need for substantial changes to the land use designation or to the zoning in the district. Some people wanted to basically remake or redo the district, some, again, upgrade or upzone this area. One of the things that we want to discuss with you is whether this is actually needed nowadays. As I mentioned earlier, there's a number of development and redevelopment efforts that are happening in the district today or have been happening over the last 3 years after COVID or since COVID. Another thing to consider is some of these different housing programs that I identified earlier. And again, we think that this is going to spur even more development without the need for significant changes to the zoning, at least from the city. And the other question is, this area is not built out right now, and is roughly at half of its development potential. So the question is, how much additional development would be possible, given some of the infrastructure challenges that we may have in here? So something that we started to do is to examine what the build-out of the JTD would do to the area. And again, there's a number of factors that were going to this. We hired a couple of consultants. They did some reports that assess the impacts of build-out on infrastructure. One of the reports dealt with traffic and transportation, mobility. The other one dealt with sewer, water, and to a lesser degree, stormwater. These are, again, the two studies. From a traffic standpoint, the traffic study that was done basically indicated that existing development in the area generates less than half of the trips that could be generated if the area were built out, just based on the existing designations. Without the city making any changes to the zoning or the land use designation, we are roughly at half of the trips that are generated in here, or that could be generated. Again, I want to be clear, this doesn't mean that half of the parcels are vacant. That's not the case. But for example, an industrial parcel where the zoning and the land use would allow up to 15,000 square feet Right now, that parcel is built, but roughly has 7,000, 8,000 square feet of development. So roughly half of what could be built based on the existing zoning. The same with some of the commercial areas and residential areas. So that's what this is showing. So if the area were to be built at its maximum capacity, without any changes, again, to the land use or the zoning, there could be some traffic challenges. Some of them would impact some different roads identified here, different sections of Parker, with Belvedere, Parker, and Park Place, and Parker, as well as Old Okeechobee Road. In addition, there's a few other roadways that would be impacted. Those roadways may already be over capacity. This build out of this area may just exacerbate some of the problems. Australian Avenue, some sections of Okeechobee Boulevard also fit into that. The study also looked at some potential access and mobility improvements that could, again, mitigate to some point some of these impacts. We also did an examination of water and sewer for build out. The results were somewhat similar. Again, different infrastructure, but similar results. It says that existing development roughly generates half of the utility capacity that could be generated if this area were to be built out. The initial assessment also shows that some of the existing infrastructure may not have all the capacity that is needed to meet some of the build-out conditions, and identify some potential improvements that could be needed. Some of them dealt with sanitary pump stations, relocation and expansion, and also there was some discussion about some water and sewer improvements. The specific location of those improvements would be based upon the exact location of new development and also the scale of some of that development. There's already also, again, some other studies that deal with stormwater that are in the early stages right now for this district. Some of the challenges, some additional challenges, again, I referenced connectivity earlier, access to the district. This affects all levels of transportation, vehicular, again, access to downtown, to Tri-Rail, to Brightline, to some of the other destinations that are very close, in very close proximity. We have some challenges with sidewalks and lack of bicycle infrastructure. This is a map and an inventory of sidewalks in the Jefferson Terminal District. So you see in green the roadways where there's sidewalks on both sides of the road, in orange where there is sidewalks on one side, and in red where there's no sidewalk. So there's still a decent number of orange and red. The ideal situation would be, again, for red to go away and everything to be green, ideally, or maybe a little bit of orange here and there. But so there's again, some gaps, some significant gaps. Some of these have been addressed. I mean, there's actually, this map looks better than it did a few years ago. Some of this new development that I referenced within the district has made some improvements, so new sidewalks have been built in here. Another challenge is once you leave the district, either on Parker or on Australian, how do you get to some of those destinations? There's Parker, there's sidewalks on one side of the road, but not on the other. Australian is a very difficult environment for pedestrians or cyclists if you want to use Australian to get to downtown or any other destination. So again, the issues are not only inside of the district, but there's also some significant gaps or lack of infrastructure just after you leave the district if you want to get to some of these destinations, especially if you are a pedestrian or a cyclist. Again, these different infrastructure challenges that I referenced, utilities, drainage. Something else is kind of some other environmental challenges. This, to the right, you have an image. This is basically showing the heat island effect in areas of the district. The darker colors just show the extra heat in those areas. The image to the lower left is an image that was taken from the recent tree inventory that the Sustainability Office presented to you. And here you have highlighted the Jefferson Terminal District. So you see, for the most part, especially this area, which coincides with the areas of the most heat, is the areas where there's no trees. So a good chunk of the district, there's zero landscaping or minimal landscaping. There's no shade trees. So it is a an unfriendly environment at times. So those are other things that, again, would need to be enhanced in this area to make it into a more pedestrian-friendly environment. An issue that's worth discussing is again, the preservation of industrial uses. We feel that this area has some pretty viable industrial areas. This is a map showing all the different industrial areas in the city of West Palm Beach. Highlighted here, you have the Jefferson Terminal District. There's a total of 427 acres of industrially zoned land in the city of West Palm Beach. 20% of all of that industrial land is in the Jefferson Terminal District. So it's a significant chunk. And we believe, and what we have heard from many of the businesses in this area, is that the industrial areas here are pretty viable. There's a lot of very active businesses. They're doing fairly well for the most part. And a lot of this is reflected when you go there during the day. Actually, there's a lot of activity happening in the Jefferson Terminal District in many of those businesses. So industrial uses, industrial businesses are pretty viable. So the discussion, I think, is needed. Okay, do we want to preserve these uses? Our thinking is yes. We should try to preserve most of these businesses to the best degree possible. Another strength of this area is, again, it's a destination. You have it's an established mixed-use area. We have established residents, and that actually, the number of residents has increased with some of these developments that I referenced earlier, but there were already people who have been residing there for decades, many decades. There's also a number of established businesses, and it's a significant employment node within the city. There's, again, daytime and nighttime activity. Nighttime, we have the Grandview Market and a few other nighttime destinations there. And all of that makes this area an attraction. It's also an area where we have seen a lot of interest for private investment. And again, that is reflected in some of these recent developments, and it's something that we keep seeing from developers and from businesses. Opportunities, the city is the largest landowner in the Jefferson Terminal District. As I mentioned, over 25 acres, so we control 1/6 of the land here. Again, this includes the city complex, public works department, fleet management. All of this, again, is in proximity to City Hall, to the police department, so there's that synergy between the uses. An opportunity, what we think could be available here is the fact that the city could set an example as the approach, with regards to the approach for the future of the JTD, by making sure that improvements within the city-owned property are coordinated, are comprehensive, and that not only benefit the city property itself, but also provide some type of benefit to the entire Jefferson Terminal District. Next steps, recommendations. We have something that we call in the Jefferson Terminal CAP, or CAP. So recognizing the value of the existing character of the area, also, again, of all the different activity that is happening in here. We think that we should be directing this activity and again, connecting all these different efforts. We believe that we should be prioritizing improvements and investments to basically strengthen the character of the area. We mentioned, again, some of the infrastructure issues that are still need to be addressing here. We need, again, all of that needs to be coordinated. We need to enhance the character of the area. And so we are recommending basically having a team, a group, composed of members of different departments that are going to be coordinating any future improvements in this area. And this is, again, the goal of this would be to enhance and complement the character of the area and make sure that all of these different efforts, some of which are already underway, are again, being coordinated and are being, one of the main goals is to target, again, the improvements to the area, make it into a better area. These efforts should also be coordinated with different businesses, with the residents, so that they help us to establish some of the priorities for city investment. So this will be a combination. We already have all this development happening. All of that should be coordinated by this group to make sure that, again, the infrastructure improvements are focused and are coordinated. Again, this also want to make sure that future development that happens in the area not only does improvements that affect the specific project, but that also these improvements are going to be ultimately enhancing and filling in some of these gaps that I already identified from an infrastructure standpoint. So that is kind of the main recommendation that we have right now. But as I mentioned, we have all these other items that we think need to be discussed, changes to the land use, and whether industrial uses should be preserved, whether that should be one of the main goals of the city's efforts in this area. This concludes the presentation, but I'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Alex. Very thorough, comprehensive presentation. Appreciate it. Questions, comments, President Ward and Commissioner Lambert?
Thank you for the presentation and for the history. I was going to ask where Jefferson Terminal came from because I just never knew, so thank you for that. As someone who started going there when I first moved back and going to Elizabeth Station, it was a revitalization that happened kind of organically. And so I guess when you talk about prioritization with all the other things that are going on and limitations with staff, how many people we have, what does that look like? Because you already have private investment coming into this area heavily and developing, and you have businesses going into it. I agree with the heat index because when I walk around there, there aren't enough shade trees in that area. But what does prioritization look like in comparison to some of the other things that we have going on within the city?
As I indicated, there's already some city projects that are ongoing right now, infrastructure projects. So looking at it holistically, thinking, okay, for these projects that the city already has identified and some future projects, city-generated projects, how can we make sure that we are tackling some of these issues that we already identified here? Some of the rail safety projects that I already mentioned, that engineering is working on, they will be enhancing safety as well as access to the district, but still a lot of things that need to be done. So it is more from that standpoint. So I also make sure that when we are looking at that private investment or that private development that you referenced that is happening, that we also, again, have this mentality, well, how is this specific development going to be enhancing the area? How can it help to address some of these deficiencies that we have listed here? So it is all of that internal city coordination, and also making sure that that private investment is in line and helps to enhance the area and address some of these deficiencies.
I just wanted to add, Dodie Glass, Assistant Director of Development Services. One of the things that happened is we went back, we worked with utilities, we worked with engineering to talk about things that they were already involved in. And sometimes we all get caught in the project and addressing the project without thinking about, we also have a development that's coming in and doing things. And we've seen some cases where, for example, there was a bike lane requirement for a project that quite honestly was an incomplete connect and perhaps could have been developed in a more thorough way. Part of it is making us aware, as so many things going on in the city, but it is an opportunity, and I think we've already found that there's this ability to have that coordination. It's heightened the discussion. You have a very unique area. You have mixed use going on. You have a lot of really positive things here. So being able to incorporate those infrastructure decisions in a broader way, looking at green corridors and the way we deal with things like, for example, in the workforce housing program, we talk about parking and landscape relief, but we also talk about thinking about how that relates to the project and the area it's in. So carrying that through to piggyback on whatever the TPA grant might be that they're looking at for Mercer Avenue. All of those, making us aware, and so when the directors meet, when administration is talking about projects, they'll understand this ability, because we try to create this level of mix, the daytime, the evening activity. You have it here. And also that base of the light industrial here that's getting more and more reinvestment. we can help facilitate that. And also your neighborhoods around there, some of the comments about being able to get in and out and those kind of things. We know that they're working on some of this. It also correlates to these discussions we're having on heat island and tree canopy. It piggybacks on the efforts for the mobility. You're so close to Tri-Rail, you're so close to downtown, but making that connection to get there really needs to be thoughtful. And people will do it if you create that infrastructure in that combination. So yes, we have tons of things, but there's an excitement to think about this interconnectivity, and being aware of it, I think, is probably one of the first steps. Thank you.
Commissioner Lambert, then Commissioner Fox.
Thank you. I agree with President Ward's sentiment, and I am grateful that, I don't know if this just happened by coincidence, but it seems like every conversation that we've had today is about efficiency, whether it's with our resources of technology, but also with staff time. So, I think you provided some very valuable insights, and, there was one photo up there of a community event, and I think that was 4 or 5 years ago, when really the height of the interest of some of the new development that Alex mentioned was happening. And I think that this is really helpful to have this data now, so that when people and developers come to us, we can, I can think of projects that have incomplete bicycle lanes and different things like that, had we been more thoughtful about this and just been more aware, I think you said a heightened and broader discussion, I think could happen. And so I think that that's exciting. And I would agree with your suggestion that a larger discussion about land use and any changes do not need to happen. It seems like what we have right now is in line with our workforce housing goals and some efforts that we're doing there. So I'm just appreciative of this information. Thank you.
Commissioner Fox.
Thank you so much. I was going to ask about the connection issue. I'm glad that you brought that up, because I think it's so important that when we're going forward and looking at the way, especially these neighborhoods that are so close to downtown, and I think that's sort of a younger neighborhood that would be more predetermined to walk or bike. But if they can bike to get out of there, but then they can't bike to make the next connection, then it's like, what's the even point of us spending the money and the time to just make, we have to look at the whole picture here. So I appreciate that. My question was going to be, just in terms of the off-site workforce housing that you mentioned, that this is an area that we could allow, I guess, that to work, but how does it work? Is there land to buy there? Does the developer have to already own something in there in order for that to be an off-site development? And does it have to be an area, I guess, that is already zoned for that, or is that part of what you're asking us about, the rezoning, I guess, of the neighborhood?
So, Commissioner, when we adopted our downtown workforce housing incentive in 2021, we provided the developer with 3 options. Our preferred option was that they provide those units on site as part of the building. The second option was that they could pay a contribution in lieu of, and the third option, they could provide those units in another location in the downtown. As part of our discussion, we extended that geographic boundary to include the Jefferson Terminal District and then some areas just north of Palm Beach Lakes by Good Samaritan Hospital. So those are the 3 options. We're pushing and making the off-site payment or the contribution in lieu of a little bit more difficult, in the sense that we're asking the developers to pay more. So we're trying to force the on-site. Just last week, we approved through the Downtown Action Committee a new residential project at 460 Fern. They're going to provide 22 workforce units as part of the building. But there is an option in place that they could find land in the Jefferson Terminal District and provide those units at that location. They would have to meet the same AMI rates that are laid out in our downtown workforce housing incentive that was adopted in 2021. But that is an option that they can pursue. No one's done it yet, but.
And just to clarify, so that's the downtown housing incentive program. Then we have what is going to possibly impact it with Live Local, that allows for, if you will, multifamily mixed use to be built on industrial commercial properties if they're 40% workforce. And then we have our own workforce program that allows for it in multifamily districts, including in this area. So basically, within the Jefferson Terminal, any of those parcels could be available, but it would be through a private effort. Most of what you see in any of those 3 programs are driven by a private decision to do these things. And so they're incentive-based to encourage workforce.
Any other comments or questions? All right, thank you very much. All right, Commissioners, I don't have anything for the general good of the body. Anybody else have anything? President Ward, Commissioner Warren?
Thank you. I just wanted to mention something, and Jessica actually brought it up earlier about her meetings and the applause sign, and I just wanted to bring this to other commissioners' attention because Commissioner Fox was there. That meeting in particular was on Dixie. A lot of families showed up just because they are concerned with some of the safety issues, but they brought their children, which was awesome, but I also think that it kind of brought up another issue, which is we don't have a lot of young parents that come to our meetings because there are issues with childcare, and they kind of were hanging out in the back right here together, and I think it was so important for those moms to be there because they wanted to make their comments known. But I know that I've had this discussion with other people that some other cities have kind of adopted for certain meetings. You know, we have the Mandel Library, they have great services, they already provide children's services, that maybe that's something that we could try out, whereas if we've got meetings in here to incentivize some of our younger families to come and take part in these conversations, to potentially have childcare over at Mandel and say, hey, if you want to come to this 6 o'clock meeting, bring your child, and it's an hour, and you drop them off there in the safe area, and attend our meeting. So I just wanted to bring that up because that was in my mind.
Commissioner Warren?
Thank you, Mayor. I was just sitting here reflecting that about 12 or so years ago, I was a part of an advisory committee that presented to the city, and we were working very hard and recommended that the city expand the trolley service to 3rd and Rosemary. So thinking now that we're here and that I am seeing on-demand trolley services that are in Pleasant City and in the Northwest and in Coleman Park and in areas that we did not see the trolley providing those services, that's a tremendous move forward for our city. And I'm excited, and I don't know if it's the presentation from Jessica and Armando or this huge cup of coffee that I had this morning, but I am very excited about the way that we can see more impact when they triggered some things that I've been thinking about with the food insecurities that we have in our community with the food deserts and talking about the ridership to the grocery store. These are things that are so very important to people in our community that I'm very happy that we're having these conversations about, and I'm looking forward to how we're intentionally connecting this information to show how we can impact people's quality of life where they're not having to purchase the food for their families from a grocery store, but where they have connectivity to resources of the city that other people have access to. So I just wanted to say that so that it's something that we're all thinking about because I think it's a very important conversation, and I'm looking forward to more progress and learning more about this and us being intentional about this inclusion and how we are connecting people to our downtown.
Thank you. Anything else for the good of the order? All right, this meeting's adjourned. Thank you, guys.